yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball, So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. The brothers are back together again, I guess they would say. How you doing, Mike?
Oh man, I'm just groovy, man. What's going on in the year 2022? Our Lord, getting it started right, trying to work around this changing weather and all of this COVID-19 Omicron madness.
Yeah, I see. Very true, very true. Charles, are you doing groovy as well, or?
Yeah, I like that. I like groovy. Good. Well, semester getting ready to start back up. Everybody's getting ready to get back at it for this spring 22 semester. So it's time to get back up and going in the lab here.
There we go. Shout out to the lab listeners as we get it going. Welcome to episode 228 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports from institutions large and small. From the NAIA to the NCCU, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer and the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Shout out to the lab listeners before we get in there, those that are jumping in, getting on board. Chuck Hunt, as always, Michael Ford says, good evening, Wendell Davis. What's going on, Brother Davis? Billy Alex Hine, David Nash. Lonnie Shaw is in the lab as always. Good to see you, Lonnie. Ricky Burton, see you as well. We in the lab, baby. I see you. Good evening in the lab from the 205. I see you. I got it. Noah Sartine is in the house. Noah Price, LaShawn Harris, Sarah Beverly. Let's get into it. News of the day. Let's go straight to Professor Bishop. What do you got going on?
Yeah, let's go with the NFL announces prospects to attend the 2022 HBCU Combine. This comes from NFL.com. The NFL in partnership with Senior Ball has announced the names of players that will attend the 2022 HBCU Combine presented by Microsoft Surface, which will be held January 28th and Saturday, January 29th at the University of South Alabama. But some names that are going to be at the Combine: D. Anderson from Alabama A&M, Quill Glass, Ezra Gray, Felix Harper. I'm going to jump around here a little bit. Keith Corbin from Jackson State, Jerry Garner from Mississippi Valley State, Juwan Carter from Norfolk State, Chris Myers from Norfolk State, Corey Banks from North Carolina A&T, Jonathan Giles from Texas Southern, Jeff Proctor from Texas Southern, and Will Adams from Virginia State. Just a bunch of guys listed on here. Zafir Kelly, Chad Gilchrist, representing South Carolina State, Marquise McLean from Southern. So quite a bit of names that really made a lot of noise this past season, 2021, that will be attending this Combine. So congratulations to those players that are participating. And I also want to mention this year's Combine will include members of the HBCU Development and Women's Pipeline Initiative. So some of the names that mentioned in there are Lauren Escobar from Jackson State. She's an athletic trainer. Reagan Davis Young from Winston-Salem State. Brianna Robinson from Florida Memorial. So you got another list of Women's Pipeline Initiative members who will be at this HBCU Combine as
well. Fascinating. The HBCU Combine is back. And live and well, it's seen. Great information there. Let's go to Professor Washington. What you got going on?
Getting on board
from the desk of the MEAC. It is official. Former MEAC commissioner Dr. Dennis Thomas will be inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. So congratulations to him. The former MEAC commissioner will be inducted as part of the 2022 College Football Hall of Fame, which it was officially unveiled on yesterday. We know he was an offensive lineman at Alcorn. Let me make sure I say that right. Thomas was a two-time Pittsburgh Courier All-American, 1972-73. He was named SWAC Conference Offensive Player of the Year in 1973, the first and only lineman to win that award. He beat out Jackson State legend Walter Payton for the award that season. Interesting tidbit, another data point. So Thomas was a member of the Braves 1970 SWAC championship team, and his teams went a combined 27-8-1. So following his playing career, Thomas embarked on a career in athletics administration that saw him serve as the assistant coach at his alma mater, head coach at South Carolina State from 1986 to 1988, director of athletics at Hampton University, and commissioner of the MEAC from 2002 to 2021. So many other accolades that we can give to Dr. Thomas, so many other facts, but congratulations to him. The Football Hall of Fame class will be officially inducted during the 64th annual NFF Annual Awards Dinner on December 26th. That's about 11 months from now, 11 and a half, give or take, and permanently immortalized at the Chick-fil-A College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, ATL, Georgia. So congratulations to Dr. Thomas.
Yeah. You better get your tongue right. You better put that all in it at all.
Alcorn, yeah.
Alcorn.
I'm sorry, Alcorn, whatever.
Those Alcornites will come after you.
Yeah, they're gonna come after you, buddy. That ain't got nothing to do with me.
It is so serious. I got corrected by Jackson State.
But my understanding on the serious.
I got corrected by Jackson State and Southern folks. You need to say Alcorn right.
I
was like, that ain't your school.
They trying to help you out, man. My understanding that he's going in the player, obviously you're going to weigh everything over such a distinguished career, but I think it's fascinating he's going in as a player. Obviously, offensive lineman award in terms of SWAC Offensive Player of the Year as an offensive lineman is just amazing. I doubt that feat will ever be done again in just about any league for that matter. So that's fascinating when you talk about that. Charles, you got some other news that's going on that you want to discuss, get on the tape?
Yeah, let's go with it. Grambling State to honor Basketball Hall of Famer and alumnus Willis Reed. Grambling plans to honor Willis Reed this upcoming Saturday by naming this basketball court after him and retiring his jersey. Of course, the great Willis Reed, former New York Knick, when he played for Grambling from 1960 to 1964, he averaged 18.7 points and 15.2 rebounds per game, leading to Grambling to 2 SWAC championships during his tenure. So congratulations to Willis Reed and his family with regards to the naming of Grambling's court after one of their legends. Huge memory for Willis Reed there.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I see you shout out to Dr. Scott over there, Dr. Travion Scott, VP of Intercollegiate Athletics. I'm sure that he played a big part in terms of making sure they came to fruition. A great class, great touch, great way to get people involved. Fascinating to see how all that turns out. Great news there and update. Mike, let's go back to you and see what you got else on the table.
All right, how about we go talk about Bowie State? Their head received accolades and honors well-deserved. So after leading Bowie State to probably the best season in the history of their football program, head coach Damon Wilson has been named American Football Coaches Association, AFCA Division II National Coach of the Year. Let me just say that again, just in case. Let me pause for effect. Coach Damon Wilson has been named the American Football Coaches Association Division II National Coach of the Year. Everybody knows Bowie State went 9-1 overall, perfect record against Division II opposition, 7-0 record against opponents, extended its streak against CIAA teams to 21 games, including 2 conference championship games and a non-conference game against Shaw, with their last loss coming in 2018, October of 2018. Interesting data point. They won their 3rd straight CIAA championship, once again defeating Fayetteville State Broncos, which kind of seems to be kind of a consistent theme each year. Matching up, but that's neither here nor there. But congratulations, big time to Coach Wilson. Well deserved. I know maybe very few, I can count them on one hand, other coaches that deserve to be mentioned, but just this Bowie State program, I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, fascinating. We had Coach on to give him our announcement of recognizing Bowie State Bulldogs as our mid-major HBCU national champion this year. They're 3rd in a row, obviously, as you said, 3rd in the last 4 years, but 3rd in a row because there was no 2020 season because of COVID. But this is fascinating in terms of history, it's been such a long time, my understanding, since the great legendary FAMU coach, Coach Gaither, in terms of being recognized at the Division II level for Coach of the Year. Last time we've seen it. You go back to the NAIA days with Prairie View, Billy Nix getting recognized. But you don't see this very often for HBCU coach, African-American, Black individual to get this type of award. So kudos for Damon Wilson. As they say in the vernacular, the price just went up. Went up. 12-2 overall record, as you talk about. Fascinating, great season, multiple seasons, kind of stack on and make it easy. Yeah, kudos to Coach Damon Wilson. Have to reach back out to him and get his thoughts on this. It's a huge award. His quote is, "This is the ultimate team award," end quote. Love the way he always brings his coaches in here. And he further states that by saying, quote, "I appreciate the recognition, but it's impossible to win this award without great coaches, players, and alumni buy-in. I understand the impact of this award and its history," end quote. Perfectly said, as you would imagine, for Coach Wilson. Going back to you, Charles, any other news that you want to get out there?
Yeah, it's almost like we have to have this news dump from Friday all the way to Tuesday, but definitely Friday. This past Friday, Florida A&M's Isaiah Land, he won the Buck Buchanan Award for best player in the FCS. 2nd year in a row. Last in the spring was Jordan Lewis who won the Buck Buchanan Award. Now it's Isaiah Land who wins the Buck Buchanan Award. Just a tremendous season this past season for Isaiah Buchanan. When you take a look at his stats, I led the SWAC in sacks. He's one of the nation's leaders in sacks. You talk about a guy, 43 total tackles, 25 and a half tackles for loss, 19 sacks and 3 pass breakups. The junior linebacker led the FCS in total tackles for loss for a Florida A&M team that was ranked 10th in points allowed during this past season. So kudos to Florida A&M's Isaiah Land.
Yeah, I get to vote in that. I was ecstatic to see that his name came out of it. Obviously, Shador, we heard earlier about the Jarius Rice Award, Coach Prime in terms of winning the Coach Award, Eddie Robinson. Big time right now in HBCUs. Obviously, they got it done in a lot of ways on the field. We talked about talented players, and they getting recognized appropriately. So, and now you see it in a lot of ways going back in terms of the recruiting framework. So it's going to be interesting to see this cycle because things are really riding high. Fascinating to see there. Did want to give a shout out just as we talk about conference churn. We talked a little bit about Tennessee State OVC in terms of what was taking place there, Murray State leaving. But now you got, according to HBCU Game Day sources, talking about MEAC Chicago State weighing options. Obviously, this came out from HBCU Game Day back in May that Chicago State would have interest in joining the MEAC. Well, it looks like they're at least doing the due diligence. My understanding, nothing really there in terms of how certain this may be, but they're taking visits. You have OVC that we talked about last week, why I brought them up, because they're looking at Chicago State too. So it'll be fascinating. You have your pros and cons there. Obviously, getting in Chicago for basketball could be significant. Travel, though, is significant when you talk about that. How do you deal with that? But also when you flow numbers, 6, 7, it'd be interesting and fascinating. Does that outweigh? You start to see some conferences look at making decisions that's more about steadying the ship versus what you would traditionally look at in terms of regionality. So be fascinating to see from either side how this looks like. It looks like Chicago State is in the pathway of looking at doing a feasibility study on football. What does that mean? How much does that help them? In what perspective? And then, like we said, do you go the MEAC, HBCU? This is a historically Black, right, predominantly Black institution, not designated as a HBCU in terms of its founding, but it has like 90+% in terms of the population that attend the school being African-American Black. So a lot of people for a long period of time have seen them in terms of Thurgood Marshall scholarship fund, eligibility a part of that, and some people assume they were HBCU. So there's always that intrigue about Chicago State and what that looks like. So it'll be fascinating to see kind of where that goes. But with that being said, let's take a break so we can come back and get into some of this basketball business. Would like to get into MEAC, but more than anything, we'd have to talk about the COVID-19 issues. Didn't have a lot of games played there, so we'll stick to the SWAC. I'll give you some updates personally in terms of CIAA, SIAC in terms of records, maybe some games you can look at, men's and women's, but we'll get a huge dump over the next 2 segments to get you into your basketball talk. So stick with us. We'll be right back as there's some teams playing really well in the SWAC. Professor Bishop may know a little bit about the Jackson State women's side about it because they pounding people's heads. Southern says not so fast, so I'm kind of looking for that matchup over the next couple of weeks. But before that, you got Texas Southern coming in to Jackson State and Alcorn. That means you on the men's side, you have an undefeated team going up against. Can they hold on? It'll be fascinating to see. Coach Bussey is doing his little magic, 3-0. Get into that. Stick with us. We'll be right back as we give you some teas and let you get a deeper dive as we talk about the hardwood in the next segment. Mm-hmm.
Let's get back to strolling instead of scrolling. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your fam.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports Network.
They can follow their dreams.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Coming back to talk a little bit about the basketball. Let's start on the women's side. Let's just get the information out there in terms of what they're doing on the hardwood. As I said, the first thing that you got to really look at is, I looked at the schedule for Saturday, was getting all excited for MEAC games, and looked on the women's side, and literally for Saturday, all 4 games were postponed, obviously due to COVID. I was like, man, you talking about COVID wrecking shop. Then you go over to the men's side and be like, okay, that's unfortunate. And 3 of the 4 games were postponed. And then similarly on Monday, as they do the Saturday, Monday as well, as you know, in terms of the SWAC, you also had in terms of both men's and women's 3 of the 4 games. So tough weekend for the MEAC. We will get in there in terms of the women's side. Let's look at what they're doing there. Basketball-wise, fascinating. When you got Tennessee State, give them some love. 6 straight wins, 4-0 in the conference race. Getting it done in a lot of ways. Men's side is solid too. But in terms of the MEAC, I did want to get your general thoughts, Mike, in terms of postponement. You're going to have to make those games up. How does that hurt you later down the road when you may have some of these weeks where you have to put in 3 games? And I also want to get your opinion on that, Charles, as well. Starting with you, Mike.
Yeah, so if you look at a lot of the policies, I think it's, as you say, you're going to have to make it up. I think the policy is you got to make it up by a certain date. So if you parlay those or you cancel those and you get maybe 1, 2, 3 weeks, you get close to, the conference championship, you could have some teams that are tired. You could have another instances where you just can't play any other game. That's going to put a lot of pressure on your program to travel here, travel there. That's going to increase by a factor of, I don't know how much practice, some factor if you have to get 3 games in 1 week to make up for previous games. So that's going to put a lot of pressure. You want to get those games in, you want to get those wins in, but that's my fear. Is that very there? How are you equipped to manage those games if you have to, load them up on the back end to make up, by April or, whatever the date that's given by the MEAC, by the CIAA. That's one of the concerns with this COVID policy. So that's the thing that comes to mind.
Great points to make there. To be specific, I'm going to shift to Charles, get your thoughts on that, where you're going in it. But that was Morgan State that was supposed to be at North Carolina Central, Norfolk at Maryland Eastern Shore, Howard at Delaware State, Coppin at South Carolina State. That was Saturday games. On Monday, you had Morgan State at South Carolina State postponed, Mid-Eastern Shore at Howard postponed. You did get the Norfolk State at North Carolina Central game in. Norfolk State, the Spartans got it done 80-70. Again, Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of just how COVID is wrecking shop early in the season?
Yeah, I think Mike hit the nail on the head when you take a look at trying to make up these games, especially we talk about it all the time. You want to kind of be on the upsweep going into the conference tournament play, and you worry about teams running out of juice toward the end in terms of trying to make up these games from COVID. It is a product of the reality. I think everybody across the nation is going to be dealing with some postponements to a certain degree. And we are especially akin to it within the HBCU community. So it's going to be a tough sled in this basketball season. If we just kind of take a look from the Celebration Bowl through now, how Omicron has really taken hold to the athletic community and the sports world in general going forward. It's going to be tough sled in getting through this winter and getting through this spring, but we know that there is going to be a topping out point at some point, and you hope teams do whatever they need to do to mitigate the circumstances.
Right. When you talk about that jumping in, looking at the men matchup, Coppin State at South Carolina State. Coppin State, they defeated South Carolina State. That was playing some good basketball, loading up on some wins. They get it done 74-65. Tyree Corbett tied the season high with 23 points. And so they won it going away. I was interested to see Coppin State just coming in at 10-14, South Carolina State 7-9. They got the big win. So that was fascinating in terms of what that looked like. And then South Carolina State doubled down because Morgan State was able to get the game in with South Carolina State on Monday. Morgan State, the Bears get the win 88-81. So South Carolina State, they got 2 games in, but they're 0-2. Fascinating to see what that looks like. Credit to Delaware State. They're going to try to get the game in on the men's side on Wednesday, Delaware State and Norfolk State. So I think that's a smart move. You do have the leg crunch of going in and playing Saturday and Monday again. At least you're not pushing that down. You've been off. I saw that from Prairie View. We'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of how that affected them maybe against Mississippi Valley, the largest, biggest upset of the game, not to get too far in that and spin off. But in terms of South Carolina State coming in 0-2, Coppin State, Morgan State getting a win. Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of what this looks like on the men's side, that they were at least able to get, a couple of more games in versus what you saw on the women's side? Yeah,
they were able to get a couple more games in. That South Carolina State early momentum from the out-of-conference season kind of blunted as you get into conference play. But quality wins, Coppin State, Morgan State over South Carolina State this weekend.
Mike, what your thoughts on what's going on there? As I said, South Carolina State Bulldogs coming off that high, winning the Celebration Bowl, thought they could parlay. You had Coach Poop kind of put that out there that their basketball team was playing better. So they were looking for some big things. I know it's early, but, man, it's going to be tough to come off the season starting 0-2. What are your thoughts either on Coppin State, Morgan State, or the Bulldogs of South Carolina State?
Yeah, so you thought they would come in. I think the news is, Coppin State starting, what are they, 1-0, 2-0, so it's still early in the season. I think South Carolina State's gonna, kind of turn the corner, and I think they'll perform. They have some good players in there. They have a pretty decent bench. So I think it's too early to really say, what's going on. I think South Carolina State will end up somewhere third, fourth in the pack, just looking at their squad, eyeballing it a little bit. But you thought they had some momentum. They're 7-10 overall, which going into conference play is not bad. If you look at a lot of the other teams, not only in the SWAC or the MEAC, typically, we have these out of conference games, and then we go into the regular season where we have our components, and you have a lot of teams that are 2-14 or 3-11 or whatever. So I think they're still sitting well. So I just say RELAX, relax.
That's easier said than done.
Yeah, I know it's old. I know if you Jackson State over there, they not relaxing.
Ain't no relaxing over there.
But let's go in there and go to non-conference teams to give them some love. I want to go into the OVC first. Tennessee State, in terms of what they do in conference, got a big bounce back win. They're 1-1 as they continue to move forward. Pretty good play this season thus far in terms of what they're able to do. They're 6-8, and that's after getting a couple of tough losses. Seems like they bounced back a little bit. 1-1. Including that last win, they just got bounced back as they defeat Southeast Missouri 95-84. Some people said they upset. People had Tennessee State coming in and beating UT Martin. New coach that came over, Bethune-Cookman, why I kind of bring them in and have some interest in that. He's jumped out there and beat up on Tennessee State 94-78. As I said, Tennessee State bounces back, not doing what they did on the women's side. They had a rolling off some wins, 4-0 early on in the season, 6 straight games. What do you think in terms of Tennessee State, either on the men's, women's side? What do you see about the program there, Charles? Tennessee State, they grabbing any of your interest? Are you like, let me see some more?
I want to see some more from Tennessee State, but definitely the women starting out 4-0 in conference play. That's kind of turned my attention over in their direction a little bit more. Come on, Tennessee State. Boy, y'all got to give me something, man. I tell you. But kudos to the Lady Tigers. Hey, you start talking OVC, I'm like, oh man.
Well, let me give you this. Marcus Fitzgerald Jr. had a season-high 23 points as Tennessee State topped Southeast Missouri 95-84. Mike, what are your thoughts? You excited about Fitzgerald? He's getting it going?
No, I'm a little bit.
Tigers over there on the seat. They're 6-0. I mean, they won 6 straight games, 4-0, I should say, in the conference.
I'm a little bit more excited about the women's at 9-6, to be honest, 4-0 in the conference, and they are beating quality teams. So whereas you look at the men's, you look at some of their wins. IU, PUI, Lipscomb, Charleston Southern, but they're losing to, the UT Martins. There's, their last win, I think, was CU Harrodsburg, Harrodsburg. I don't even know where that is. So against quality wins in the conference, I'm sorry, I'm just not convinced. Whereas the women, on the other hand, they're showing you something. I don't want to get into the statistics already, but I think I will. And if you look at, you look at overall statistics leader, they're in the top 2, in scoring offense, scoring defense. So I'm a little bit more excited about the women. I can't get excited about the men just yet. I need to see some more.
Well, let's stay in the independent. Let's go to the Big South with the Aggies. Go ahead, Charles. You wanted to pound on Tennessee State Tigers a little more?
I'll be glad with Mike being here, because when you ain't here, I have to swim out in the deep end of the ocean talk about OVC.
We got Big
I'm
South.
here to take your slack. I got broad shoulders. You can. I got broad shoulders.
There you go. Going to the Big South with the Aggies. Women's side, not so much. Men's side, we talked about last Thursday. They had their opening win of conference play against Presbyterian. They won 65-57. But the key thing is they're actually 2-0. On Saturday, they rebounded and had a nice, tough win against Radford, just squeaking out a victory as Marcus Watson puts up 18 as they get it done against Radford, 73-72. They came out, had a 5-point lead, first road game. Radford got it back going, but then they do squeak out the victory in terms of what's going on there. Sticking with you, Mike, anything about the Aggies? 2-0, Big South is something big. You know, they got divisions in the Big South. Anything there?
No, actually, I will give the Aggies some credit for starting out 2-0. And they look to have some quality losses. I will give them a little credit. I think they're on like a two or 3 game winning streak. Again,
3 games.
Yeah, 3 games winning streak. So I'll give them some credit. I'll see, where that parlays into over the next couple of weeks, but I will give them some credit. However, sorry, the women, they're at the bottom of the cellar at 0-2, 3 and 3 and a million. You'd like to see, a little bit more life, a little bit more offense coming from that squad. But I'm cautiously optimistic to see what the Aggies can do on the court as they get into the mix of their conference play.
Charles, if he had a top 5, I think you could argue A&T would be in there, 79 overall. I know it's early, but they got it done in non-conference play. At home, Corbett, they're 4-0, still a tough place to play. Love what they're able to do in there. 2-7 on the road, but you understand that early in the season. Can they translate that in the Big South? As Mike said, they've won 3 straight games, 2-0 in the conference race. They're in the Northern Division along with Longwood, High Point, Hampton. That'll be an intriguing matchup, what that looks like in Campbell. Hampton is 0-2. Just make sure we let them know what's going on, 4-8 overall. Hampton is 3-0 at home, so it'll be interesting to see if they can bounce back a little bit and get back into this race as Campbell is the bottom 0-2. But looking at A&T, Hampton, on the men's side, anything you want to say about what's going on there?
Yeah, I think Mike hit the word that I was looking for. Cautiously optimistic in terms of what they are able to do. Of course, we know A&T pedigree program coming from the MEAC and all that they were able to do over there. We know playing at Corbett is one of the tougher venues, I think, in the nation. They get raucous up in there. So, you look for them to really hold serve at home and really play teams tough on the road. So I love that basketball program that A&T has. So I think they're going to be fighting it out over there for the duration of the season over there with those Campbell Camels.
The camel toe. You talking about Camels. A&T, as you said, 0-2, but shout out to Coach David Six over there at Hampton. They continue to do what they do. They're 2-0. Be interesting if they can fight themselves out and see if they can put themselves in a position to actually get a Big South championship. So we'll keep an eye on them. Let's get back, take our next break. On the second half, we'll come back in the third quarter. We'll get into SWAC play, and we'll talk about what's going on in the SWAC, more games. So we'll take a deeper dive of who's hot, who's not, give you some indication, see what Charles or Mike thinks about some of the bigger games or bigger upsets, or where they shocked in this early part of the season. Most of the teams in the SWAC have played 4 games, some of them just 3. But quite a bit of action there outside of those teams that had to forfeit some games, i.e. Prairie View men's basketball. They get off the losing side. Stick with us. We'll be back, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. They did it in great fashion. Even the coach is not in there, but we'll see that on both men's and women's side to see how COVID is affecting not just the games, but also coaches, not necessarily players, but coaches not being on the sideline. This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watts, Charles Bishop. We'll be right back after this break.
This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN Sports Wrap, Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, The Pregame Show, The Carlos Brown Show, the ONG, Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Bounty versus the old family dish towel. Drying with a fresh sheet of Bounty leaves your hands cleaner than a used dish towel that can carry and redistribute food residue. So ditch the dish towel for better hand hygiene. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
This is Dr. Cavil inside HBCU Sports Lab. Let's get into it, as they say. Start with the women because Sherry's not dead. Let's go back to our Saturday scores. We had Southern defeating FAMU 71-55. I told you coming out of this weekend, I was really intrigued about what this matchup would look like. Got a chance to get a little bit of the feel watching it on Facebook as they do Facebook Live of the game. Fascinating. And then you had the Grambling Bethune-Cookman. Grambling gets the win 66-61. Bethune-Cookman's played some close games, but they lost most of those games. They get swept this weekend. Jackson State, Alabama State. Jackson State 79, Alabama State 58. The women of Jackson State are making statements. Not only they're beating teams, but they're like throttling teams. You thought this matchup would be an intriguing one in terms of what went down last year. I wonder if they were seeking to make a statement. If they were, they certainly did it. Auburn State at Alabama A&M 61-59. Mississippi Valley at Prairie View. Valley loses 84-77. Arkansas Pine Bluff, Texas Southern. Texas Southern takes a nail as Arkansas Pine Bluff gets out there with the victory 86-82. The women of the Golden Lions, they get it done. They get it back on the winning side of things, but then they take their trip to Prairie View. We'll talk a little bit about that in terms of what that looks like on Monday. Close out those scores. Southern continues to make their statement as they beat up on Bethune-Cookman 74-47. Southern also, much like Jackson State, when they play teams, they beat them down. Grambling, FAMU gets out of there with a sweep as they beat Grambling 84-78. Jackson State over Alabama A&M. Check this score out, 79-52. Alabama A&M women were picked to be pretty solid and won a couple of games splitting the other week, but wow. Texas Southern puts up 100 points. That's with 7 women on the court. It's amazing in terms of what they able to do. Cynthia Cooper is out with COVID, so that's the assistant coach getting it done. Credit to him in a lot of ways. 100-66 was that score. Pine Bluff defeats Prairie View 73-63. So Pine Bluff evens up their record at 2-2. They bounce back on the road. Big road victories as they sweep Texas. That doesn't always happen. Alcorn State, Alabama State 74-39. They bounce back and make a thumping of the Braves as they got thumped. Seemed like they wanted to get a little action there. Talking about the women's side, let's go to you, Mike. Women's basketball, you see the standings there quickly. Just give you an update. You have Southern at 4-0, Jackson State at 3-0. Alabama State, as they took a loss, their first loss, they dropped to 3-1. FAMU rebounds gets 2 big victories as they go to 2-1. It gets back into the winning side of the things as they split, I should say. They had that last second shot against Bethune-Cookman. Pine Bluff is the one that bounces back 2-2. Prairie View is at 2-2. Texas Southern at 2-2. So you can see right in the middle, it's clogged up. You do have those teams that have not gotten a win in conference play. Bethune-Cookman at 0-3 and Valley at 0-4. Mike, what are your thoughts? Some of these matchups, records, where you want to go?
Right now, it's a traffic jam in the middle. Southern and Jackson State have stood out right now immediately as a team to beat. and it's not even a question. It's been convincingly. How convincingly? Southern, they beat, you said it yourself, Bethune by 30. They beat FAMU by, measly 25. They beat Prairie View by 40. So they're beating Texas Southern. They beat Texas Southern 10, but I would say Texas Southern with an asterisk because I don't know how good they are. They've had 4 games they've canceled. Coach Cynthia Cooper is out on COVID. I don't know how good they are, but they're kind of, let's say they're in a traffic jam. Right now, Jackson State is about doing the same thing. Not only are they beating teams, they're beating them convincingly. So, they beat the Bulldogs by 25. They beat Bama State by another 25-30. So the two teams really, it's basically separating the wheat from the chaff. You see Southern and Jackson State as the early standouts. Now, Alabama A&M, they were supposed to have a pretty good team. You'll see if they can pick it up, over the course of the season. But that's what stands out, at least at this point, this early point in the season. You have Amisha Williams from Jackson State. You have Dylan Horton, as standouts early in the season for scoring, but rebounding. You have Amisha Williams. You have Amisha Williams in every other category. So if there's one individual standout for Jackson State, she's kind of picked up from where she left off last year, Amisha Williams rebounding and scoring. So those are my early data points so far. Also defense and offense, you have pretty much the same 2 or 3 leading the SWAC early.
Yeah.
All teams are trying to manage this whole COVID thing. So teams like Texas Southern, maybe, UAPB, Prairie View, you don't know how good they can be because they seem to have been hit harder with this COVID-19. But
yeah.
So you don't know how good they can be. But right now it's a Southern and Jackson State kind of division right now.
Yeah, you're talking about in 3 weeks, January 31st. We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but it looks like that may be a big one. We'll see how it matches up. We got a couple of games before that. We'll do some of that pregame talk on Thursday, but now let's talk about what happened on this past Saturday and Monday. Charles, anything stand out to you perspective? Are you in agreement with Mike in terms of what Southern and Jackson State have done in terms of not just winning ball games, but how they won ball games? Or are there some other things sticking out to you in terms of the SWAC side of it on the winning side?
No, definitely. I think Jackson State and Southern have kind of separated themselves early. I think it was a huge statement this past weekend. Jackson State going over to Alabama State and Alabama A&M and getting a sweep in the manner in which they did it, and they were just dominant. Amisha Williams-Holiday, Saturday night, 26 points and 18 rebounds against what many were picking with Alabama State, the number 2 team right behind Jackson State. And then you follow that up Monday, taking on Dariana Lewis, another double-double magnet. And Amisha Williams-Holiday, again, stands out again in that game with a huge 20-point performance and 13 rebounds. So I think, we can say it's Jackson State and Southern and everybody else at this point right now. But one of the things I've been doing is kind of checking the box scores to see if those key players are playing. And that's why the Jackson State-Alabama State sweep or the Jackson-Alabama sweep kind of stands out to me because those star players were playing in those games for both teams. So I think that's, a data point that I just kind of keep in mind with regards to balancing things with COVID, because you want to make sure that those star players are in the game and before you kind of make a snap judgment.
Yep.
I like that point you made in terms of who actually played in the game, not only just the scores that took place and why it may be a bigger statement than some people may think offhand. Getting on to the men's side, Grambling defeats Bethune-Cookman 68-66. Great matchup there, entertaining game. Southern defeats FAMU 80-66. Close for a while, and then Southern has been able to do what they've done. They pull away late, get the victory. Big games there, getting it done. Alcorn State may be the surprise to a lot of people on the men's side. Coach Bussey down there defeats Alabama A&M that was playing some pretty good basketball. And you know how they are in Huntsville. They get it done 78-71. Jackson State and Alabama State. Alabama State takes it to Jackson State. Not only beat them, but they beat up on them 72-57. Coaches turn around. He's out in terms of different, not COVID, but the birth of a new child. Interesting there as he gets back in the mix. But you have the upset probably in a lot of people's minds is Mississippi Valley defeating Prairie View 84-82. Went to overtime. Was at that matchup. Prairie View twice had a 5-point lead with 2 minutes, both times in the regular session, and then overtime allowed Valley to come back, and they finally get it done in that matchup. You have Texas Southern putting up 90 points against Arkansas Pine Bluff, beaten by 19. Let's go to Monday when you talk about some of these scores, as you have Southern over Bethune-Cookman 69-59. You have Grambling losing to FAMU 75-66. Alabama A&M gets a victory, close one. I watched this one down to the wire. Big buckets, big plays at the end of the game. But the Bulldogs pull it out at home, 60-58. Rebound after the tough loss on Saturday to continue the downward spiral. The Jackson State Tigers. Interesting when you talk about those top teams, what they did last season and how they hit the skids. Prairie View defeats Pine Bluff. They bounce back, make a statement 75-58 as they get it done. Alcorn State Braves continue to win, surprise a lot of people. They defeat Alabama State 70-60. Those are the scores. Sticking with you, Charles, what do you think on the men's side in terms of the pair of games that were played this past weekend?
Definitely the Saturday night game with Valley getting the upset at Prairie View. We know how difficult a place the Baby Dome could be. It might have been helpful, for the students.
Ending that long 30-game win streak. It comes to the end. You got to start it over now.
That was huge. That was huge for Mississippi Valley on Saturday night. But I think the Alcorn Braves, I think we're starting to see Landon Buss's team is for real. They started out conference play with the win on the road at Jackson State, and then do it again this weekend with Alabama State and Alabama A&M. So the Braves playing some great basketball. And, it's disappointing, to be honest with you. Jackson State starting out 0-3 thus far in the season, trying to find out who is going to pick up that scoring slack with not having Tristan Jarrett on the team this season. It'll be interesting going forward. We saw Malachi Wyden, the Jackson State football player, really come in and do some damage against Alabama A&M, hit some big shots and some big threes in that game. But we'll see if the ball finds his hands a little bit more going through this season.
Mike, you have Southern at 4-0, Alcorn at 3-0, as you said. Alabama A&M 3-1. A couple of teams sitting there. Texas Southern bounces back after their loss on the road to Southern, but they come back home, get 2 sweep wins with big scores. They're 3-1. Only team that hasn't had a win, as you said, is Jackson State sitting at 0-3. Prairie View finally gets their wins, get off the snide. They're 1-3. It'd be interesting to see once Coach Smith gets back into action. Done that without him. First 2 games they forfeited, then they split at home. Like, as we said, stop the win streak. Pine Bluff gets 1-3 as they're looking up as well. Mike, what do you say?
Yeah, so it's some really interesting points to look at. Some of the teams and who has the most cancellations, whatever. I kind of look at Prairie View kind of like I look at the TSU for the women's. They have, 4 cancellations due to, COVID protocol or COVID experiences. So you don't know what they can do once the coach gets back. I don't say what's surprising is what's surprising to me this year is how good Alcorn State is.
Yeah.
I think going in, if you would have said that they would be 3-0, starting off the SWAC, it would have surprised me. So we'll see, what they could do. Southern, I don't know what's in the water. The women and the men's program doing well. They're 4-0, 9-7 overall. They're probably, one of the top scoring teams. And if, they got some really good quality wins, so if you look at their last couple of games, they beat Bethune, they beat, FAMU, Prairie View, that one was forfeited. And then they beat Texas Southern, which is down, of course, because of COVID. So they have some players that are out. So to me, it looks a little bit more with the men because of the COVID. I don't know if the COVID seems to be affecting more teams in the men's side. I really don't know that. I think time will tell. I know that you do know that Southern is for real and they're pretty good. Alcorn is pretty good. What you don't know is how good Texas Southern is. You don't know how good Alabama State or Prairie View, even for that matter, and even Mississippi Valley. They're 1-3. They're down in the half. But is it COVID? Is it something else? That's to me the unknown factor with some of those teams, and I don't know if I can weigh in just yet.
Yeah, as you said, need a little more data points, more on the men's side maybe than on the women's side. What you look at. What's fascinating to me though for the Braves, they're 3-0. and they've done that on the road. You know,
on the road.
Traditionally, you say you split on the road. They take down their rival on the road, and then they go to tough place to play, Alabama. Both in Huntsville and Montgomery, they get wins on the road. Those two teams, Alabama A&M, more mature than ever before. They play solid, getting wins. They get it done. It's fascinating to see what goes on this weekend. But this weekend, they get to play the Prairie View Texas Southern team. It'll be interesting. Coach Smith should be back on the road. We get to see maybe is Prairie View a little bit different in terms of getting some of those players back, coach back, or is just the indication that Prairie View is kind of swung back in the other direction. And then you got the big giant, Texas Southern. Should be a fascinating matchup when you talk about that, get another setting. The other thing with Coach Bussey and Coach Smith, obviously Coach Bussey was the assistant coach of Prairie View. Fascinating matchup again when you talk about the, coach and the mentor coming out. I'm fascinated to see what that will look like. Let's get into our last break. We'll come back, give you some records of what's going on in CIAA, SIAC, and then we'll tell you, come back on Thursday, and we'll get into some of these matchups that you can look forward coming up this rest of the week and into the weekend. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Itchy, squirmy, scratchy, family not getting clean? Get Charmin Ultra Strong. Go get 'em. It just cleans better. With a diamond weave texture, your family can use less while still getting clean.
Goodbye, itchy squirm.
Hello, cream bottom.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. Brian, AD, Roy, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes even between washes. It's never not working.
Kind of like us. Number 15?
Never not working.
I don't like this one.
Me neither.
Let's get out of here.
Head & Shoulders scalp shield, never not working.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down. It's like a loop machine.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop back for our last segment. Let's get into some of the Division II action, CIAA, SIAC. Give you some updates of what teams are doing, overall record teams to kind of keep your eyes on. It's early on over there, but some teams are kind of trying to separate themselves. On the women's side of things, let's start with that Northern Division. Virginia State looks like they're back into it, doing what they want to do. Overall, just 8-7. Have a one-game win streak, but they sit at the top of the conference at 4-2. Behind them, trying to get it done, is a log jam with Elizabeth City State, Lincoln, Pennsylvania. Bowie State sitting at 2-1 in terms of the conference race, getting down there, sitting at 10-2, 9-4, and 4-6 respectively. So you see non-conference Bulldogs kind of struggle a little bit, but right in the middle of the race. Then you go in the Southern Division, hadn't played as many games. Remember, you're going to see some of this unevenness with COVID cancellations going back and forth. You have Livingston sitting at 3-7 overall, but they're 2-0 in terms of conference race. Winston-Salem State 2-1. Also Fayette, also 2-1, 6-4, 5-6 respectively. Shout out to Livingston and Winston-Salem State. They have a 2-game win streak as they get to that 2-0 and 2-0 respectively in terms of what's going on there. Let's stay with the women on the SIAC, see what's going on there a little bit in terms of the standing. In a lot of ways, fascinating in terms of what you see in that match. So remember, you do have Allen and Edward Waters. They play in some SIAC games, but not sitting in the standings. This is on the east side, if you would. Allen at 0-4, Edward Waters on 1, doing some work on the basketball court. We'll see if that changes the tune of things a little bit there. But all the action is pointing to Savannah. Savannah State 7-0, 11-0 overall. Yes, ranked top 25 in terms of what they're doing. Benedict is right nipping on those heels at 11-5 overall, 6-1. Clark Atlanta says, don't forget about us. We're sitting at 4-2. Fascinating to see what goes on there. In the West, it's all teams are all up in here. Nobody's really separating themselves. Overall, it's 8-5 when you talk about lane. But in the conference race, in that West Division, they sit at 4-3. Tuskegee at 3-1. They're really the ones pushing it, if you would. Talking about 8-2. Miles, Golden Bears sitting at 9-2, 3-2. Can they make some things interesting for Tuskegee? That's what you got going on when you talk about SIAC. CIAA, in terms of what they do on the men's side. Lincoln, Pennsylvania, 6-game win streak, sit at 10-4 in that Northern Division. Lincoln, Pennsylvania. All right, in some basketball business. Conference-wise, they sit at 3-0, right behind them, Virginia Union. It looks like they're going to be tough, 9-3 overall, but sitting at 2-0. Let's go into the Southern Division when you got to look at Fayetteville State. 4-game win streak, sitting at 8-5 overall, 3-0 in the conference race. Behind them, you have St. Augustine at 1-1, but you have Winston-Salem State at 3-2, 9-4 overall with a 3-game win streak. So some interesting matchups coming on the road. Should be interesting in the next couple of weeks. Last one, we'll look at the SIAC on the men's side, give you a little update in terms of what's going on there, what teams to watch out for. Give you some love to Allen and Edward Waters. 0-2. Edward Waters has not played a game against the SIAC foe. Remember, they're transitioning over. Benedict again, in terms of what they're looking at, 12-3 overall. In the conference race, 7-0. Looking serious in terms of what they're doing. Morehouse is trying to figure out their way. 8-6 overall, 5-2, so they're still in the hunt. But you go down to the West, and you have Miles that is just 3-1. They only played 4 games there to talk about it. But Tuskegee with 14 games, they split it overall 7-7, but 4-2 in terms of what that looks like. Log jam with the rest of the team. So it looks like the balance of power in the East. We'll see what that looks like. You do have some crossover games, so it's fascinating there. Let me you, Charles, just overall your thoughts in terms of a team or two that you want to keep your eyes on as we move forward, men or women.
Savannah State women. That jumps out at me. Anytime you say undefeated, normally when we kind of look over in that direction is Benedict women and everybody else. But shout out to Savannah State getting it done over there. So looking forward to what they have going the rest of the season. Early data points say everything is moving forward for them. So it's going to be an interesting watch.
Mike, your thoughts? SIAC, CIAA, men's, women's, where are you going?
We start with the SIAC. Savannah State, for the same reasons that CB said. You have a team that starts out, 11-0, 7-0. I mean, gone through, external, teams and internal teams, and they're doing, they have yet to be undefeated. So I'll be interested to see, what they do the rest of the season. The other thing is Benedict. What's in the water at Benedict? Both men's and women's. The Benedict women's, they're right behind Savannah State at 6-1, 11-5. And of course, you see what the men are doing. I don't see anybody. Maybe if you talk to the SIC experts, maybe Miles can step up. But the Benedict men, they're 7 and 12 and a little bit. So what's going on with Benedict? Can their men's and women's programs run the gamut this year? I'll be interested to see what happens with both teams.
Great points made by both. Let's call it a show. Thank you for listening to Inside HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Cavil, the Dean of HBCU.
One thing, Dr. Cavil.
Inside the lab.
One thing.
College HBCU Sports with Mike Watson, Charles Bishop. Did you jump in there and want to say something, Mike?
Yeah, real quick. Thank you, Raymond Holly. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the passing of the great Barbara Jacket. Women's track and field pioneer for Prairie View A&M. She passed a few days ago. Her memorial service, I believe, is Saturday. So much about her. Assistant coach for the 1979 Pan-African Games. She was Olympic track coach for the 1992 USA track and field team. So much a pioneer, if you know anything about track and field. So kudos to her, her career, her legacy, not only at Prairie View A&M, but with women's track and field. So just out there, I didn't get it in earlier, so sorry.
Well said.
Well said.
And Doc, I wanted to say shout out to Chuck Hunt. I appreciate you sending me that clip of Mississippi Valley State, a video of them in the 1965 Tournament of Roses Parade. Me and my sister have been looking at that ad nauseum. My father was a participant in that with Mississippi Valley State's band, the first HBCU band to participate in the Tournament of Roses Parade. But we've only seen still photos. We've never seen a video of that. So I appreciate that, Chuck.
Wow.
Yeah, great point when you talk about that. Also, I want to give condolences to the FAMU out there as they lost a tremendous individual to play football with them in terms of what that looks like. So did want to do a moment of silence in terms of Bobby Lane, Rattlers lose SIAC MEAC legend over the years, 38 championships as a track and field coach, legends there. So we'll pause before we close out, give them a moment of silence. Recognize that because you talk about Coach Barber Jacket, you talking about barrier breakers, both these individuals, just tremendous icons in terms of what they've done for HBCU sports. With that, we'll close. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday and Thursday right here at 6 o'clock. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest in the news. When I say next week, this Thursday, I should say, follow me, Dr. Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's Dr. KENYATTACAVIL. Again, that's Dr. KENYATTACAVIL. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube. Dream big, continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Mike?
Lecture.
Dismissed.